Hi everyone. Good
Morning.
morning. Good morning. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It looks like everybody that we're expecting has shown up, so we can actually just jump straight into things. So welcome back to our webinar. Just to reintroduce ourselves, remind you of who we are. My name is Shakira. I am a CWP, so that's a Children's Wellbeing Practitioner, and I'm from First Steps.
My name is Abby, and I'm also a CWP at First Step.
And so you're here the second week in a row. This is part 2, and we're going to be talking about strategies for managing anxiety. So as with the last week, just to let you know, we are recording today's session, but all of your mics and cameras are switched off and your names will not be shown to anybody else. We'll be sending out packs with resources and slides after this, so you don't have to take notes, but you're more than welcome to if you want to. And lastly, please feel free to pop any questions you have, just as with last week, in the question box, and we will have a look at them towards the end of our session together today. Okay, let's think about the aims for today now. So our aims are to review what we covered in session 1 about understanding anxiety. We want to do that first of all, and then we also hope to explain various strategies that can help you manage and respond to anxiety in your child, and hopefully build up a really good toolkit for you to be able to use. So let's get started, shall we, by just having a bit of time to reflect. So before we begin anything else, we just want to take a moment to think and reflect on what it was that we discussed last week, and for you to think about what you actually remember from last week. And have you noticed anything this week about your child's anxiety and how you might react emotionally? Have a moment to think about that. Okay, hopefully something has come to mind. Hopefully you've remembered a few things. I'm going to just cover some key messages from last week now. So last week we explained that anxiety is a normal human experience. However, anxiety can become excessive and become a problem when it starts to impact your child's life or your everyday life as well. And the cause of this is rarely one thing, as in the cause of anxiety. It's rarely one thing, but actually there are normally many factors that contribute towards the development of anxiety in children. We thought about how anxiety prevents itself in 3 areas: thoughts, feelings, and behaviours, which all interact and feed into each other in what we call the cycle of anxiety. And we also thought about the impact of parent reactions on a child's cycle of anxiety. I just want to reiterate that it's natural as parents to want to protect your kids from experiencing intense emotions such as anxiety. But what we do want to do is support you as parents in helping your child to accept and manage when these kind of feelings do come up. So now let's think about what we're going to be covering today, different strategies for managing anxiety. So on your screen now you can see what we'll be covering today. So all of these strategies we'll be working through. We're going to provide you with building blocks and a good toolkit for how you might respond to your child's anxiety in a helpful way.
Okay, so we wanted to begin by talking about the idea of containment. So I just want to, for a second, imagine that you have just started a new job. You're in a new office, you've got some new colleagues, and you have a new role which you know a little bit about, but you're not completely sure of the expectations. So now imagine that you've been provided with a mentor for your first week at this job, and think for a second about what you might find helpful in that person. What qualities might they have? So perhaps they have a calm presence, perhaps they might look for clues as to when you might be feeling unsure or anxious. Maybe they give you their full attention and respect and value your thoughts and feelings. And in turn, they allow you to feel safe and makes something which feels overwhelming and stressful feel more understandable, safe, and perhaps more secure. And the same can be said for children as they face new and unfamiliar experiences and emotions in their life. Because often children don't actually understand anxiety or where it comes from or why they're feeling that way. And so it's helpful to think of the idea of containment as literally acting as a container by holding on to your children until they're able to control and manage them for themselves. So simply by recognizing that your child might be feeling overwhelmed and is just trying to make sense of it with them, this is the first step to responding in a containing way. So for example, if your child comes out of school, they're really grumpy and you can see that they've been crying, how might you respond to that? Some might react by asking the child what's wrong with them. Why are they upset? Why are they behaving that way? They might approach the teacher with the child and demand to know what's happened. They might get angry with the school. They might get angry with the child. And this is what we would call an escalating response. So it triggers the situation to feel overwhelming and even more out of control for the child. But a helpful response might be to give your child a hug, use a really calm tone of voice, and let them know that you've noticed they're upset. So I can see you're upset. Let's go home and we can talk about it. We're going to be talking about lots more ways to contain your child's emotions throughout the webinar today. So when children are anxious, what we want to do is tune into them and support them in expressing exactly what it is they are anxious about. Because children may not be worrying about what you think they are. So it's important that you ask them, even if you think you know what it is. So we would recommend doing this by staying really curious and asking open-ended questions. So why are you feeling worried? What makes you worried about that? What do you think might happen? Or what is the worst thing that might happen? These are just some tips that we have to talk to your child about what their worries are. Because it is a really difficult thing for children to be able to do. So first of all, pick your moment, a time when you're both able to engage and listen. We would recommend avoiding just before bedtime or just before or after an event that they're nervous about. So, if they're anxious about school, perhaps don't have this conversation on the way to school. So as I just mentioned, talking about worries is really hard for children, but there are ways that you can make it more fun and rewarding. So perhaps get them to act out their worries with toys and play. Children have really great imagination, and play is a really great indication of how they are making sense of the world around them. Talk to them about characters in movies or storybooks that you're reading together, or maybe talk about it over a hot chocolate. We would recommend checking that you've understood what your child has told you. So repeat it back to them and ask if it's right. So for example, so you're telling me that you're worried about doing your homework in case you get it wrong and your teacher gets cross. Is that right? This is a really powerful way to let children know that you've heard what they're saying and that you've understood them. The next tip is to be empathetic. So give them the message that you can see they're worried and then express your genuine support for them. So for example, I can see you're feeling worried. That must be really difficult. We would also suggest normalizing worrying. So tell them that lots of people get scared and anxious about different things. And there are also some traps that we might fall into when we respond as parents. We might dismiss our children, so we might tell them there are worse things happening, or don't be silly, that's a silly idea. And these statements are really common, and we all fall into them sometimes, and they can feel really helpful. But try to be mindful of this, because think back to a time when you had kind of something going on in your mind that you needed to talk about, or perhaps think back to that mentor that we thought about at the start at your new workplace. And what did you find helpful and what did you find less helpful in that person? So try to be mindful of this when you yourself are responding to your child's. As discussed last week, a powerful way that children learn is from their experiences. So by responding to their worries in a way that makes them feel safe, validated, and listened to, can support them to feel comfortable in sharing their worries with you again. If your child is having a really difficult time with kind of talking about what their worries are, try to make suggestions, but we would recommend posing them as questions instead of statements. So, for example, do you think you might be worried that your teacher will be cross with you if you get the answer wrong? Or some children might worry that their teacher will be cross with them. Do you think that's why you're worried?
Okay, so now we want to talk about encouraging brave behaviours. So now that you have a bit of a sense of what your child is worried about, they need to learn that their anxious expectation either won't happen, or if it does, it won't be as bad as they think it will be, and they might actually be able to cope. So this can be done through facing their fears. It's common to want to avoid situations that scare us. We all do it. It can make us feel so much better, but only in the short term. And parents sometimes can facilitate this because it's natural to want to step in and protect the child from their worries. But this means that children don't get to find out what happens when they face their fear. So the next time that they're faced with the same situation, they're anxious again, and the cycle of anxiety just continues like that. For example, a child who does not want to put their hand up in class because they're worried that they might get the answer wrong and that they might get in trouble, they might never put their hand up to avoid this completely. However, they need to learn that they might not actually get the answer wrong, and if they do, it will be okay, and their teacher won't be angry at them. The only way they can learn this is to actually expose themselves to this situation. Therefore, we want to encourage brave behaviours in children by supporting them to face their fears. To do this, we can make what we call a step-by-step plan. This is where children are gradually exposed to situations that they fear in a step-by-step manner, starting with steps that feel more manageable and working their way up to an ultimate goal, building up their confidence and helping them to learn important new information about their worries and develop coping strategies along the way. So now we're going to look into how to actually create a step-by-step plan. So what you want to do is begin with an ultimate goal. What is it that anxiety is stopping your child from doing? What would you like them to do? And what would they like? Anxiety is preventing them from being able to do at the moment. For example, one ultimate goal might be to go to a sleepover or to sleep in their own bed at nighttime, for example. We tend to phrase these ultimate goals in a positive way, so state what you want your child to be able to do as opposed to what you don't want them to do. And then next, we break this ultimate goal down into smaller steps. For example, being able to sleep on their own at nighttime might become mum sits at my door, mum sits outside my door, mum sits at the top of the stairs, and so on and so forth. So then you want to encourage your child to rank each step from least anxiety provoking to most anxiety provoking. Then next, you want to put these steps into a step-by-step plan. We really encourage you to make this collaborative. Do it with your child. Have them decorate it and make it creative. For example, a child might be moving up a ladder, so you can have a picture of your child and just move them up the ladder every step. Or maybe you have a picture of your child and they're flying to the moon and they stop at different stars along the way. Just want to make it creative and fun for them. And then this is a really important step, make sure you write down their predictions for each step. So what do they think will happen? Then you want to attach a reward to each step to help keep them motivated. So for example, completing the step, staying in bed while mum sits outside my door, might be rewarded with a movie night or 10 minutes extra at the park. And then start at the bottom step and support your child in putting it into action. Make sure you follow through with the rewards afterwards and celebrate their bravery with them. And make sure to review your steps with your child afterwards. So How did they find it? How did the step go? What did they learn? It's a really important question. What did they learn? And then you want to repeat the step until your child feels completely comfortable and it no longer causes any worries or concerns. Try not to give in to the temptation to break the steps down even more once you've already made them. It's okay maybe to just do this once, but actually it can become a bit of an avoidance strategy for your child. If they keep asking you to break things down, it's typically because they're trying to avoid things, and we don't want you to collude with them on this. So it's best to let your child know that you have confidence in them. You could say, I know it's hard, but I think you can do it. And remind them of the reward that they'll get for their bravery. If your child is resistant to trying, don't give up. Give them choices as to how and when they'll do the task. For example, if it's around, making their own sandwich, instead of asking, do you want to do it? You can ask, do you want to make a Marmite or cheese sandwich for your lunch? So you're giving them the options rather than asking if they want to do it or not. And then what's really helpful is if you share your own experiences of learning a new skill. For example, you could say something like, when I was your age, I found it really tricky learning how to tie my shoes, but I found it helpful to keep practicing every day, and eventually I got there.
So the next strategy that we're going to talk about is problem solving. And a lot of the time, children might be worried about a problem which actually has a solution. But what we know from research is that children who are anxious will believe that they can't cope with the problem on their own. And children who are highly anxious often feel like they're not in control of challenging situations, and they don't have any confidence in how they might solve that problem that they have. So, you might recognize that in your child. They might come to you for support when there is a problem that they could solve on their own. So the next strategy involves helping children to recognize worries that are actually inside of their control and build up their confidence to start solving those problems independently. And one way we can do this is through a really strategic step-by-step problem-solving strategy. And this might feel unnatural because as parents, we do want to step in and we do want to provide solutions for our children when there's a very obvious solution. But children need to develop the skills to find that solution for themselves. So to kind of introduce this to your child, we would firstly encourage you to tell them to come up with all of, first of all, identify the problem. So ask them to describe it to you. What is it that they're worried about? And then ask your child to come up with a list of as many different possible solutions that they could think of. So no matter how weird or wonderful their suggestions might be at this stage, anything goes. So ask them, what do you think we could do if that happens? Or if a friend had this problem, well, what might they do? What might you tell them to do? So for example, if your child is really struggling with their homework and they don't know the answers, they might suggest some solutions such as not doing the work, emailing the teacher for extra help, asking mum and dad for some help, or trying it out anyway and seeing how they do. So once they've come up with a nice long list of solutions, have them think about what might happen if they tried out each solution, what the outcome might be. So what would happen if you tried out this solution? What would happen in the end? What do you think would happen to how you feel in this situation? Is this solution possible? So ask them which one they think would be best to try out, and then give it a go. So get them to try out the solution, and then afterwards reflect on it with them. This is really, really important. Talking them through what happened. How did it go? How did they cope? Did they cope better than they expected? Were they able to make a difference to the situation? And really importantly, what did they learn? And then it's really, really important to praise and reward them for their effort in this and their bravery as well. And hopefully over time, they will build up the skills to problem solve more automatically, and it will just become a bit more automatic in their mind to do this process. So to help children understand if they are worrying about something that they can problem solve, we would recommend using one of these worry trees. So by working your way through all of the questions on the tree, so you start at the top, they can figure out whether the worry is something that is inside or outside of their control. So if they learn that their worry is something they can do something about, so if they answer question 3 with yes, then you start bringing in that problem-solving strategy that we spoke about. So make an action plan. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? If they learn that their worry is outside of their control and there is nothing that they can do about it, help them to reframe that worry. Perhaps share that it's not so helpful to think too much about worries that we can't control. And then try to change their focus of attention. So some families find it helpful to confine problem-solving time into a specific time of the day, which is known as worry time. And this basically gives you and your child a space to deal with worries without letting them take over the entire day. So we would recommend choosing a time, place, and duration. It should be around 15 to 20 minutes once a day at a very regular time when you can both think together really clearly. And we would also recommend, again, not doing this before bedtime or before any event that they might be worried about. And during this time, bring in the worry tree, bring in the problem-solving skill that we just discussed. But then at any other time of the day, it's really important not to engage in any conversations about worries. Let your child know that you've heard their worries and that you'll talk about it in your worry time. If it helps, write down that worry quickly as they arise during the day, and then set them aside by putting them into something like a worry journal, or you could make a worry jar, and then you can come back to it later on in your problem solving time.
Okay, so now we want to think about talking to your child about anxiety. So just like how we spent our first session talking about what anxiety is, your child's first step to managing anxiety is to talk to them about it. Talking about it is actually a great way to show your child that emotions are normal and nothing to be ashamed of. Many children don't actually understand anxiety, where it comes from, what it is, and this can actually feel quite scary and overwhelming. And a lot of the time, anxiety can be felt as a physical feeling before we're consciously anxious. And this can sometimes make our anxiety worse and we start to worry about the physical symptoms. So this is why it's important to spend some time encouraging children to tune into their body when they're feeling worries. An exercise we often use with children is body mapping. So what you do is you draw an outline of their body and have them identify the parts in their body that are affected when they have a worry. Ask them questions to help them, such as, do you feel hot everywhere? Or sometimes my legs get a bit shaky. Do yours ever do that? You want to work your way through every part of the body, from their facial expressions down to their feet. And it would be helpful if you also completed your own body map exercise at the same time, just to show your child that anxiety and worries affect everybody, even you. And when they are worried, bring out the body map. Ask them where they're feeling it in their body. Is it head? Are their arms feeling tingly? Is their stomach feeling a bit upset? Just check in with them. And the aim ultimately is to acknowledge that anxiety feels unpleasant, but it's not dangerous. So that's what we want them to learn from this. And then building independence. Anxious children often expect that they won't be able to cope in difficult situations. As a result, they avoid trying new and challenging things. It's hard to resist the very strong urge to help children with new and challenging things, especially if we have a past experience where our children have gotten upset. But this gives them the message that you don't think that they can cope and that they need your help. So instead, we encourage you to support your child having a go by thinking about everyday tasks that they could try out to help build up their confidence and independence. Maybe spend some time coming up with a list of activities that they might actually be relying on you for, but they could actually do it themselves. For example, tying their shoelaces or making a sandwich. Show your child what to do if they've not tried the activity by themselves yet. For example, talk them through each step of tying their shoelaces, and then show confidence in them. Let them know that you think that they can do it. Convey this in your body language and what you say. Praise them for having a go, even if they don't manage to do it. Small steps are still a victory. So tell them to keep going, and with practice, they'll get there.
Okay, so the next part of the webinar, we're going to be talking about relaxation strategies. And a key part of managing anxiety is learning how to relax. And these techniques can be used as both a reaction in anxious moments. So if you recognize that your child is feeling really anxious, something that you bring in the moment. But they're also really helpful as a prevention for anxiety. So we often relate this to being similar to how we brush our teeth every day in order to ensure our teeth are healthy. We need to relax every day and have wind down time in order to ensure that our minds are healthy and that emotionally we're okay. So one of the most important techniques for relaxation is deep breathing. And children can learn to use simple deep breathing techniques. And we would kind of recommend getting them to breathe really slowly through their nose and really deeply into their tummy, and then slowly out through their mouth. So you can practice this with your child by getting them to put one of their hands on their stomach and tell them to breathe in, and notice that their stomach expands out like a balloon. And then when they breathe out, they notice that their stomach balloon shrinks. We can also use another fun way of explaining it to children through pizza breathing. So pretend that you have a pizza in front of you, and you breathe in slowly through your nose as you smell the pizza, and then breathe out slowly through your mouth as you cool the pizza down. And just encourage your child to take a few deep breaths like this when they are feeling anxious. And it's a really good way to kind of calm the whole body down. You could also use your hands held out like this, and we call this the 5-finger breathing. So what you do is you would trace your thumb up as you breathe in, and down as you breathe out, and in, and out, and in, and out. And have your child do it with you. And this is a really good visual way, and you keep going round until you get to the end and down. Or you could use a shape like this rainbow on your screen, and you would trace the color as you breathe in slowly, and then back again as you breathe out. And there are loads of different kind of, if you use the internet and search kind of visual breathing techniques for children, there's loads of different kind of shapes that you can use, or you can make your own. There's also something called progressive muscle relaxation, which is a really useful relaxation strategy. The basic idea of this is to go through every single muscle group in your body, one by one, tensing and releasing. So if you do your hand, you would tense it really tight for 5 seconds and then relax it. And then maybe do your legs and get them to stretch their legs out really tight for 5 seconds and then relax. And work through every single muscle group in the body. This allows children to understand what a tense muscle feels like, and then in contrast, what it feels like to completely relax that muscle. And it's really important to note that the more that your child practices these activities, the easier it will get. And this is really great because it can be used anywhere at any time. So even at times when they are kind of particularly anxious, such as in the classroom or at school, they can use this as a really good way to kind of react to when they start to get physically really anxious. Another relaxation strategy that we like to talk about is mindfulness. So I'm sure you might have heard of mindfulness before, but take a moment to have a look at the picture on your screen and notice the difference between the two stickmen. So on one side, you can see a man who has a mind that's full. So the man on the left is kind of thinking about the past and the future and all of the things that he needs to do. You know, that's in contrast to the person on the right, who is thinking about what's happening around them. They're looking at the trees and the sky. So when we're anxious, we tend to be thinking about the past or the future. But what being mindful does is it allows us to connect to the present moment. So using a mindfulness exercise is a really great way of kind of interrupting those spinning thoughts and shifting our internal focus to what is happening around us rather than the things that are making us anxious. So a really, really simple way to introduce children to the idea of mindfulness is using this 5 sense exercise. So if you notice that your child has become really, really worried, get them to name 5 things they can see and, you know, do it with them. So say, okay, look around the room, what are 5 things that you can see? Get them to list them. And then, okay, 4 things you can feel. Get them to list 4 things they can feel. 3 things they can hear. 2 things they can smell. And then lastly, 1 thing that they can taste. And this is really helpful because they slow down, they pause, it creates a bit of breathing space and a time for them to just kind of connect with their surroundings and calm themselves down. You can also find lots of different mindfulness meditations, which we really recommend to use. And there's lots of helpful child-friendly versions online or through using different apps. And we will be sending out a resource pack after this webinar, and it will have some recommendations for different meditations that you might use. There's also using yoga. You could do some yoga with your child. It might be a really nice way to connect with your child, doing this together with them. And then lastly, with children and relaxation strategies, think about how they might relax and unwind. Everybody relaxes in different ways. Some people find some activities more relaxing than others. So really have a think about all the different things that your child can do to relax and unwind. Maybe they like listening to music. Maybe they like to take a bubble bath or spend time with the pets. They might like going for walks. They might read a book. They might find a new crafting activity. Whatever it is, it's really important that your child is participating in kind of wind down activities every single day to help them to feel calm and relaxed, as we said, to kind of prevent anxiety from coming up.
Okay, now we're going to shift gears slightly to think about yourselves for a moment and thinking about managing your own worries. So now I just want to invite you to have a think about your own worries. What worries you about your child, and how do you personally manage this? Having an anxious child is worrying. Having a child is worrying. The world at the moment is worrying. So you may even have anxiety yourself. These are really challenging times that we're in, and we're all stressed and full up, and responding to our children in a containing way might actually be quite difficult. Just like, as you can see with the image on the screen and on an aeroplane, if you've ever been on an aeroplane, they always make the safety announcements, and one of them is that if the pressure in the air cabin changes, then a mask, oxygen mask will fall down. Please apply your own before you help anyone else. And we use that analogy in this situation. You can't possibly take care of your child if you're not taking care of yourself. So it's important, really, really important to make time to do that. Even if it's a brief 10 minutes a day, just give yourself that time out, that relaxation every day so that you can be in a better position to be able to take care of your child. So we've got this, pause thought here. Pausing in the face of your child's anxiety can help you be aware of your own emotions. So what's going on for you in that moment? From an awareness of your own emotions, you can actually realize that you have a choice in how you respond. Learning to pause can create a space between your emotions and your reactions. So you want to be aware of your responses to your child. Look out for any anxious signals or messages that you might be sending to them. You want to try and model being calm and try and model coping behaviours. Try not to provide reassurance to them. Instead, just tell them encouraging things like, I really think you can do this. I was so proud of you when you went to your swimming lessons last week, for example. And ask yourself, is your reassurance supporting your child to test out their fears, or is it colluding with them to avoid their fears and to do safety-seeking behaviours? You want to try to aim for helping your child to test out their fears. That's the goal. And then you want to praise them and reward them for their brave behavior, and specifically name what it is that you're proud of. So you could say something like, you did so well getting up and getting ready for school this morning in such a calm way. I know this is not always easy for you. So right there, that was very specific, kind of just naming to them what it is that you were praising them for. And then I want to encourage you to think about your backup team. Ask for help if you need it. Think about the best person to talk to. It may be a family member, maybe a friend. We just really like to help parents to develop what we call their very own backup team, which refers to people around them that they consider their support network. And you should think very carefully about who you put on your team and what type of support they can offer you. Is it emotional support, or maybe it's practical help? The backup team works best if you let the people who are on it know that they are on it. So think about ways that you could tell them. And that draws our webinar to a close. Thank you so much for listening. We've got a couple of other things to talk about. I know, Abby, you're going to probably talk about SilverCloud, and we're also open for questions too, but hopefully you found this useful last week and this week, bringing all this information together, which we'll send out in packs, but hopefully you found this useful. Do you want to talk about SilverCloud, Abby?
Yeah, sure. So, there it is. So something that First Steps offer to parents supporting an anxious child is an online program called SilverCloud. So while you're on the waitlist, we can sign you up for this online space, which is basically, it's based on the idea from cognitive behavior therapy, which is very similar to some of the strategies that we spoke about in the webinar today. So it's all about the way that thoughts, feelings, and behaviors interact with each other. And it's basically a really, really great way to kind of develop your knowledge on how to manage your child's anxiety. So as you can see on the flyer here, there are around 7 modules in the program, and you complete them at your own pace over a period of 8 to 12 weeks. And what will happen is you'll be set up with a SilverCloud supporter. So it would be someone from First Steps who would kind of give you regular reviews every few weeks and kind of support you through the program. And it's really interactive. There's lots of different tools that you can use. So if you are interested in signing up for this program, feel free to contact First Steps on either email us or give us a phone call. Yeah, I guess we'll now have some time for some questions if you
have any. Okay, it's not a question, but someone saying thank you so much. It was really useful, and I feel better equipped to help my daughter. That's brilliant to hear. That's the aim, that's the goal, and yeah, there's been so many things that we've gone through in a really short space of time. So just well done for sitting here and just taking that in, and yeah, take your time to digest it, and yeah, you see some really positive changes. Thank you.
And we'll hopefully be making the kind of recordings available on YouTube and send those out to you so you can rewatch anything that you found helpful or anything that you feel you need a bit of a refresher on, and also the packs as well with the slides and some resources.
Okay, I can see some questions have come in now. See, my daughter gets anxious on journeys and self-soothes with dummies and something to hold. Should I leave her as she is or try to wean her off the dummies? She'll be 5 in June. Well, that's a very good question. I would say, I don't know, as a 4, she's not quite 5 yet. Because I feel like a 4-year-old, she's quite young when it comes to, having conversations with her. But ultimately, what you want to try to do is get her to a place where you understand more so what it is that she's worried about. So, kind of having those conversations that maybe closer to when she is 5, to be honest, before she's very young. And then, yes, I'd say working towards weaning her off them by helping her to learn that she doesn't have to depend on these things. But as I said, she is very young. And to be honest, this webinar is more so aimed at 5+. So some of these things might not be quite applicable to her at this very young age. So I think, yeah, just take it step by step and just see. I don't know, Abby, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think, don't worry too much at this stage. If you're noticing that it's something that is becoming problematic, so it's starting to impact on your ability to kind of do daily things, or if, she's relying on it in the long term, then definitely try and bring in some of these strategies. But I think at this stage, be kind to yourself and just know that children develop at different stages as well, so don't compare to others. That's what I really have for that. I've just seen that somebody's put, thank you, this is really useful. I really need to make time to do the exercises. I think that time is always an issue, but that can be part of the problem. This is really common. Almost every parent that we work with will say, oh gosh, where do I find the time to bring in all of these? And at first it can feel daunting and feel like a lot, but it is just about thinking, okay, yeah, life is busy and there's lots going on, but actually the most important thing is that you're spending time taking care of your child's emotional well-being, and what's going to be most helpful for them in the long term is perhaps not is perhaps spending a bit more time now doing these things. And it's the sort of thing that once you get into the routine of it, it can feel a bit more easier with time. Does that make sense? But yes, we completely understand. Life is very hectic and we're asking you to do a lot of things with that time.
I see another question. Do you think there is a possibility the worry time can make your child feel they have to have a worry every day? I think you have to gauge it, because some children really do have worries every day, so they require that every day at the time, like at first. But it's a good idea to kind of reduce it. So if your child doesn't need to have worry time every day, maybe you can kind of propose it to them as worry time is at 4 p.m. If you need to use it, we can use it. If you don't need to use it, we can do something else with that time, just so that they don't feel pressured to have to come up with a worry every day. And actually the thought that they can do something else with that time, maybe something fun, can maybe encourage them, oh, okay, they don't need to depend on it. But yeah, some children do need worry time every day at first, but the goal is to reduce how frequently they would need it anyway. That's a really good question.
Really good question. And I think something that I would really, really reiterate is that, you know, you are the expert in your children. As parents, you know what's going to work for them. You know if, you know, something might not be more helpful for your child and something will be helpful for your child. So it's all about thinking about your specific child and what they need. And perhaps that would be something that they maybe feel that they need to live up to and they need to worry every day. But I also think it's knowing how to put it to your child. So if you put it to your child as a idea of something that's there if they need it, but actually if you don't need it, that's great, that's incredible, and we can do something fun. And you know, I'd be really proud of you if you didn't have any worries that came up, you know. But also it's okay if you do, and we have this time now to spend really thinking about that worry. And you know, everybody worries, and that's okay. So it's about thinking about how you word it, I think. Somebody's asked about the email address. So the email address that we should contact if we're interested in the SilverCloud program, is it the same or different to the email address that you emailed us from about this workshop, and will you send it to us as part of the information pack? Also, thank you very much for these 2 workshops. They've been very helpful. You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And yes, the email address is the same, and we will be emailing you information about SilverCloud from that email address as well. So the flyer will be included in that email. So yeah, if you just respond to that email, then we'll pick it up from there.
Okay, I see another question. Thank you for sharing the strategies. I just wanted to ask about any suggestions around bedtime. My daughter struggles switching off as she has all these thoughts. We try yoga and other relaxation techniques, but they do not seem to work. Any other suggestions? Good question. I do think a lot of the things that we covered today can be utilized, but you just have to think about when is a good time to do things throughout the day. So for example, introducing worry time would be good, but not before bedtime. So picking a time earlier on in the day, maybe that, you know, she can use that space for some of her worries. But then we just say really practical things such as screen time, none of that at least half an hour before bed. So no iPad, no TV, no phone, nothing like that. Just to kind of help wind down. Maybe, I don't know, like a bath time routine. Maybe there's, spending some time in the bathtub could help. And yeah, the different strategies we went through today as well. So doing particularly the one that Abby mentioned, the progressive muscle relaxation, that's really, really, really good for just kind of calming yourself down. Even I do it sometimes when I can't sleep. It's a really useful technique. So the tensing and relaxing of different muscles throughout the body. So if your daughter's lying down, maybe she could start off with her feet and scratch up her toes really tight, and then move up to her legs and her stomach, shoulders, just move up and tense for 5 seconds. Relax and repeat it, and that just really helps bring about that feeling of relaxation. And also if she's focused on that, she doesn't have the opportunity to be focused on all the other thoughts. So it's just about all the different strategies we've been through today kind of placing them throughout the day so that she has, options as to what to do, but also she has an opportunity to think about the thoughts and the worries earlier on in the day so that it's not just before bedtime.
These strategies are not magic ones, so they're not going to fix everything overnight. And it's about kind of drawing from maybe several different strategies. And, the relaxation techniques are really great. And, it's amazing that you are using them with her. That's really great. And I encourage you to keep going with that, even though they don't seem to work. Just keep sticking at it. But also bring in some other ideas. So maybe, thinking with her about the thoughts that she has at bedtime during the day, and thinking, okay, so what are those thoughts? What is it she's anxious about, and what does she need to learn?
Educate if it is, on anxiety, as we said, educating on anxiety. So there's a link to a very kid-friendly video on what anxiety is, just really kind of helping her understand what's going on for her. And then, then, as Abby said, definitely utilizing both rewards and distractions, maybe doing some of those breathing exercises, because maybe the pain associated with it isn't actually physical, but more so it's just what she's perceiving and kind of thinking about and almost imagining, so to speak. So just helping her to be able to calm down, and then kind of working through things there. But yeah, I think when you have one-to-one sessions, it might be a bit easier to discuss that in detail with the clinician that you're seeing as well.
Yeah, and I think also being aware of how you respond when she is kind of behaving in that way. Kind of, I can imagine it would be very easy to get quite, emotionally involved if your child is clinging onto you and pulling at your legs. So being really aware of your own reactions. The slide that Shakira talked about, when you pause and you think, okay, how can I respond to this in a containing way? Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. And I think that's the last question we have. I can't see any more. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming, and definitely look out for those packs that we'll send out.
Thank you, everyone.